Maneva na sema PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV de osia dem yopo.
Ken Ofori-Atta and his lawyers have decided to take all of us on a roller coaster. I mean, sometimes there's a guy that sang a song and said, "Kill me shy." When I hear Frank Davis and I hear Minka Premo, I'm shy of them, that they are even able to issue statements. I mean, they must respect themselves at a point. The press release from Minka Premo was read by Hamza. I wondered what really pushed the firm to do what they did. What were they trying to prove? What were they trying to communicate? That the court in the US was able to come to a determination that the criminal charges here was that frivolous, and was it the reason why Ken was granted the green card? I mean, sometimes you must give us some levels of respect and intelligence and stop what they are doing. Because what they are doing is annoying a lot of people. You understand? And no wonder Minka Premo is somewhat being investigated on the PDS. Is it to suggest that he, in some way, the coming back of Ken Ofori-Atta also has an issue or exposes him in another direction? Remember, one of the issues that Ken has been accused of is also the PDS. Let's get that straight. Right from the beginning, we were told that Ken was going for a medical checkup. Is that not the case? At the point, they surfaced with a fake document from Mayo Clinic suggesting that it was a prostate cancer that they were treating. And if that was the case, you and I know that a lot of men in this country are suffering from prostate cancer. So it's not something that you need to be in the US to be dealt with. La Paz Community Hospital, they can easily deal with prostate cancer. So then they're right there, they are exposed. But you see, this letter even emanated when Ken Ofori-Atta had been invited by the special prosecutor to appear before him on the 10th of February. That was when all the lies started. To the extent that we had the current minority leader, Afenyo Marcus, go to parliament and tell all of us, the entire country, that by May, soon, Ken Ofori-Atta will be in Ghana, May of 2025. We are in June, a year after that, and our brother Kwame Marcus has not seen the need to even come and apologize to the people of this country that maybe he was misled by Ken Ofori-Atta. We lived with it. Then we had the first letter coming from Minka Premo, also telling us how Ken was that ill or sick and was treating himself, and that they were ready and prepared to meet the OSP and provide every available document or information that they may need. When the going got tough, we had a group of people who claimed to be family members of Ken Ofori-Atta, faceless people, issue statement and tell us that Ken was their family member and that he was going to come. When we pressed for the head of that family's name, they ran away. And then the wife had to intervene and said that now she's in charge. The wife also assured us that Ken will ultimately come along the way. Since then, we have not heard from anybody. Then it came to light that, contrary to the view that some of us, their lawyers had made us to believe, Frank Davis and co had made us to believe, that the man was that sick and was at Mayo Clinic, not knowing he was chilling in an apartment in Washington. So I picked him up from the Washington apartment, and do you believe for a moment that when he was picked up, if he was that ill or sick, they would have thrown him into detention? No! They saw him fit. So they sent him to detention at the Caroline Detention Center. So issues started emerging. That was when we were told that he had applied to adjust his residence status, meaning that the true intention of why he left the country was not the so-called medical attention he was seeking, but rather to adjust or get a green card or an American passport. That was it. And lo and behold, now that he has been granted green card, we are told by the same lawyers that he was granted a green card because of what he's going through in this country. Along the line, I also came here. I remember I came here and then discussed one of the lawyers that he took. You know, this case is revealing a lot of things. And he had Kasimi. He himself was a problem back in Afghanistan. So when you have characters like this defending Ken, you must understand that the issues in there are that weighty, and that the man has made it a point that he will not come back to Ghana. But you see, whether or not he will come, I believe that he must reconsider his decision, because at a point he will come. Strangely, somewhat, he will come to this country. And this is how, or this is where those who are emotional human beings in this country, that when matters happen and time elapses more, then they begin to play the emotional keyboard, we would play back some of the things. Because you see, why? President Akufo-Addo told us that he came in to protect the public purse. Were you not told that?
Yes.
And that not under his watch that people make money of government or the public institutions. Now, whom did President Akufo-Addo give the purse to? Whom did he give the... So now we are doing this banter. In fact, as early as 2018, when the government was barely a year old in office, he singled out Ken Ofori-Atta that he is a national asset. Nobody had told President Akufo-Addo to name anybody who was a national asset in his government. He willingly came to tell us that Ken Ofori-Atta was a national asset. So now, national asset, please, wherever you are, come and let's ask you simple questions. You say no. Kill me shy. But it's history that is repeating itself. Remember, his father has been the finance minister before. The same period that President Akufo-Addo's father was a ceremonial president of this country. Go and check why Buzia was overthrown. They run down this country, and this country, we don't take history lessons serious. And you brought the kids. When they did that, they got away with it. So what would the kids do? Anytime you tell them that, look, the man is running away from justice, oh no, he will come. He has done nothing wrong. Yes, on the face of it, a person is innocent of what? Proven guilty. So what is preventing him from coming? When Victor Salome was that sick, I mean, I like people like that. He was not extradited to this country. He came. He failed the law. At the end of the day, he was on the wrong footing of the law, and he served his sentence, and ultimately, he died. Mr. Pepra, Kwame Pepra. But you see, Ken's own role and what is happening now, we as a country are part of what has happened. In fact, you must blame the parliament of this country. Because before Ken was nominated by President Akufo-Addo, we knew of Obotan in 1998 to 2000, what he had done to Senate. So how come at the vetting, nobody raised that issue to prevent him from becoming our finance minister? So when he got away with it, he realized that this country is only mouth, all talk, no action.
And even cook certificate.
Cook certificate, the man had F in economics at the level, he was a national asset. What are we talking about? So this administration, I believe now they have filed the extradition with the U.S. attorney, what's the name? The U.S. state, yes. So that one is there. There is a case at the court. I believe that it has to go on. But you see, the reason why some of us still believe that he has to be here is that as part of the trial, we may discover a lot of things, that it will blow your mind. And for me, nobody must be talking about trial in absentia. Either than that, in the case. So you see, before the coming of Sedna Tamaklo, a lot of people, my brothers from the MPP, including the sisters, what they were comforting themselves with was the fact that, why are you not bringing Sedna Tamaklo? To the extent that Frank Davis was even saying that. That criminal fugitive is that, why are you bringing it? So thankfully, Saturday, so we have crossed That part, the road is not clear. Why are they not making the same noise and say that Ken, come, so that you are not, nobody is saying you are guilty. And indeed, when it comes to this country and he's not guilty, some of us will not allow that something that he has not done, you will push it on to him. But today you are struggling for the US passport, tomorrow Grenadian passport, the next day Egyptian passport. What sort of life is this?
That in itself is incarceration.
That's the point.
You are punishing yourself before the state gets involved.
But I want to admonish all those that are called Ken Ofori-Atta to begin to distance yourself now. Let's see you. Else tomorrow, the name Ofori-Atta may have issues in holding positions in this country if you keep quiet. Now, they also make proposals, if you go to our Electoral Commission, that instead of having about the commissioner plus 2 deputies and 4 others, they believe that, look, the 4 others is not good enough. I mean, the commissioner and 2 deputies are enough to be able to deal with the myriad of problems I have. And I agree with them. You see, one of the problems, and you and I understand that election 2024, we were saved by some grace. It was not as though the Electoral Commission did a yeoman job, a beautiful job that assured us of the peace that we are enjoying today. People were ready to pounce. I saw what happened at the Acquis Central, Patrick Boame's place. That was the first time I saw that a group of people were ready to fight. Why? Because right from the processes leading to the selection of commissioners of that commission, that body, the element of mistrust has been, as it were, introduced into the system. I mean, Senator, why would anybody sit down, and here I'm talking about the president of the day, Nana Akufo-Addo, sit down and look straight into the faces of the Ghanaian and say that a body that is supposed to be neutral, an independent body like the Electoral Commission of this country, you would nominate as a commissioner to that body a known NPP communicator. I'm sure you have heard of Dr. Peter Piahin. It happened in this country. At least when I was in the NPP, I was communicating with Peter Piahin. Now you want to assure the public that everything that commission will be doing will be fair to all sides. Then to create the impression in the minds of the people that it's truly an independent body, you must be the last person to go and nominate someone who is a known member of your political party. And as if that was not enough, remember Hajia Salima Tijani. I mean, obviously the wife of TB Damba, who was Ghana's former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, a member of the New Patriotic. You can't send that person to the Electoral Commission and still want the people of this country to believe that indeed it's a neutral body. Especially coming from the back of the history of the Electoral Commission itself, when before the days of 1968 the Ministry of Local Government was responsible for our elections, and which was one of the reasons why the coup makers cited as being the reason for the overthrow of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And to that extent, we needed to establish an independent body to organize free, fair, and honest elections in this country. So the proposal that they are making is to settle on a commissioner, 2 deputies, and make sure that they are truly independent. Indeed, this time around, instead of the president being the one that will be nominating the Electoral Commissioner, they want the Council of State to take that lead and do the search for this country. And so, by so doing, they are also proposing that the composition of the Council of State be moved from the current 31 to 33, with government not, or the president not having the opportunity to appoint more, so that if you really want the citizens of this country to believe in the new system, then it means the Council of State must be truly an independent body that is capable of helping to settle on individuals that will occupy independent constitutional bodies as being truly independent. So I agree with that, but that will, like I said, would depend entirely on the composition of the Council of State. And talking about the Council of State, Senator, that brings to fore the fallout that we have experienced in the last couple of days, that the former Chief Justice, her ladyship, Madam Sophia Kufu, as a matter of fact, is now a known fact that she has tendered her resignation to the president and by extension this administration. And we are told that the resignation took place somewhere September of last year. It's a bit of a challenge, especially as to why the announcement to that effect did not come early. But let me say that the former Chief Justice saw the need to resign, because if she had not done so, I was going to petition for her to be booted out of the Council of State. I mean, this subject matter cannot pass without Ghanaians being reminded of her actions and inactions during the removal process of Madam Ereba Isaba Tokono. I mean, what the former CJ did cannot be contained in any serious corporate environment. That as a member of the Council of State that is responsible for constitutional, legal, and petitions of the Council of State, that you are the person, the first point of call when petitions are sent to the Council of State, you review it, you share with your colleagues, and have discussions on the subject matter, and by extension advise the president. Will do all these, and at the end of the day turn your back and say that the petitioner, you will go and side with the petitioner and be a witness to that petitioner. I mean, who does that? Especially when there was voting, when voting took place, one person abstained. What's the word for that? Abstained. We don't know whether it was even you that abstained. Now, granted that it was even Sophia Kufu that abstained. I mean, Senator, abstinence does not mean that you do not agree with what took place. It's one of two. Either you agreed but you did not want to offend the person that was affected in that occasion. Remember, the person that was on trial, or that who had been petitioned to be removed, was the Chief Justice. And she, as a former Chief Justice, maybe thought that, look, yes, I agree with the petition, but to go and vote that it will be removed would also be problematic, so let me abstain. Again, the person that was being petitioned to be removed was a woman, or is a woman. She is also a woman. So the affirmative action also takes place there. Again, both of them attended the same old school. That will also create problems. So I'm abstaining. Because if indeed the former Chief Justice believed that what was going on was wrong, I believe that she would have been better served the people of this country by voting no to it, so that posterity will record that and say that when it came to matters to remove the former Chief Justice Tokono, there was a member of the Council of State by name Sophia Kufu who stood up and said no. That did not happen. Then they make a very interesting recommendation to do with dual citizenship and whether or not they would be in a position, or they be allowed to occupy public positions that are barred under the Constitution currently. And this is where, Senator, initially I was for this idea, but recent developments, Senator, is giving me a totally different view, and I believe that the Constitutional Review Committee must, in as much as they want to implement this, and those that will be implemented this proposal, they must take a second look at it. And I'm saying this because of what our brother, our father, our grandfather, a staunch member of the New Patriotic Party and the former finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has done in recent months. We were sitting out somewhere when the former finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, sought permission from the former chief of staff, Madam Osei. Now, on that occasion, the former finance minister asked permission to go and seek medical attention. So, in all intents and purposes, he was traveling to go and have some medical checkup. So later on, we were told by the Immigration and Custom Enforcement of the United States that they have arrested the former finance minister in his cozy apartment in Washington and thrown into a
Considering we'll be coming to that topic next.
I am just, okay. So it's part of the topic.
Your
yes.
lengthy background, that's why.
Yeah. So let me just scratch on the face. But what I'm saying is that recommendation to allow people with dual citizenship must come with some caveat. What Ken Ofori-Atta in mind is very, very important. Now, they also make recommendation regarding the issue of how to treat children, especially those that are intersex. You see, Sana, the issue of LGBTQ and its impact and its other adjoining problems, I find that provision in terms of the human rights of children and how it has been couched, the recommendations that have been couched under this by this constitutional review, very tricky. And I believe that implementers must take a critical look at that provision. Now, they also make mention of the fact that certain presidents must be paying taxes on their salaries, allowances that they receive. And I believe that is long overdue. Hey, we are all in the country paying taxes. And you are the one, together with your cabinet, that have been introducing all the taxes that we pay. Why must you be the one introducing taxes and you will not be paying some? So that if the tax is sweet, all of us will enjoy it. If it is bitter, all of us would enjoy it. So once again, I believe strongly that presidents, as citizens of this country, we call them the number one gentleman. The number one gentleman or the number one lady must be lady enough, must be gentle enough to make sure that he or she contributes his or her quota to national development by way of paying taxes. Then there has been issue of land ownership. I mean, the way and manner various presidents of this country has been abusing public lands is mind-boggling. Because your constitution under Article 257 clearly vests the lands that we have in the president. One is supposed to be on behalf of the people. They see it as their own personal property. When they read the constitution, they end at vested in the president and leave the rest. So that, but for the vigilance of the Ghanaian, the small forest we have at your back here, Achimota Forest, would have been gone. You know already that land they have shared. They brought the year what? 144. They have shared the lands over there. And they are waiting for the first person to enter so that all of them will follow. But I want to assure those that have bought that land that that will be the last freedom of this country, the second independence. You cannot come into government with a view to serving the people of this country and begin to sell everything. Look, there is a list. My brother Derek J has always been coming here talking about his lands as cantonments here and there. Go and see how lands were sold to government functionaries, to judges, that they bought it as low as 7,000 Ghana cedis. Which land in cantonment to go for 7,000 cedis in these 2000s and 90s? Hey! And they will never sell that land to Senna Nombo. They will sell it to Mr. Pratt. They will sell it to Mujib. Have you bought some?
No, I don't even have it.
But interestingly, then they sell it to their cronies, judges. And you think we still must do that? No way. Something has to happen with it. So I agree with the Constitutional Review Committee on this subject matter that yes, something ought to be done about it. But you see, in all this, ultimately, and just to wrap up, what we must also focus on is to be getting good people leading this country. You see, you can have all these beautiful laws, but if the implementers by themselves are very bad, are extremely bad, are corrupt in nature, they will still find ways and means within the law to exploit all of us. And for me, that is where our focus in terms of building strong institutions that will be able to assure us of very salient men and women who will lead this country should be focused on.
Indeed, many other countries, as we speak today, are playing with the possibility of improving their democratic architecture. And the bedrock of democracy, clearly, is rooted in rules and laws. And the document that embodies these rules and laws all over the world is that of the Constitution, whether in its written form or unwritten form. Thankfully for us as a country, our guiding principle and light as far as our democratic journey is concerned is one rooted in our constitutional documents. And the Supreme Court, in a line of cases, a litany of them, they have indicated that indeed the Constitution of Ghana is supreme when it comes to all other laws. However, you cannot also delink a nation's search for developmental growth from its constitutional underpinnings. And that is why it is stated again, but permit me to read, maybe to give perspective to it. If you remember the landmark case of W0rsens AG, where the Supreme Court said that a written constitution such as ours is not an ordinary act of parliament. It embodies the will of a people. It also mirrors their history. Account therefore needs to be taken of it as a landmark in a people's search for progress. Landmark in our search for progress. It contains within it their aspirations and their hopes for a better and fuller life. That is what the 1992 Constitution must represent when we look at it. Clause by clause, article by article, we must be able to see the aspirations of the Ghanaian people. We must be able to see their hopes for a better and fuller life. At any point in time, we look at a constitutional provision in the 1992 Constitution and we feel that the particular provision has become a stumbling block to the realization of our quest for better lives. We ought to be concerned. And that is where amendments ought to be carried through. Now, that is not enough. If you look at the preamble to the 1992 Constitution, it is also insightful. And I'm making references to these provisions so that people will begin to understand that, look, the proposals for amendments is not just one rooted in aesthetics or flowery political language, but it is even a constitutional injunction, an invitation, as far as the 1992 Constitution is concerned, for us to act when it is important for us to do so. And if we look at the preamble, it says, in the name of the Almighty God, we the people of Ghana, in exercise of our national and inalienable rights to establish a framework of government, which shall secure for ourselves and posterity the blessings of liberty, equality of opportunity, and most importantly, prosperity. This is a preamble, and it continues. In a spirit of friendship and peace with all peoples of the world. So it is not just domestic in nature, it is also international in terms of our relations with other countries. That it says, and in solemn declaration and affirmation of our commitment to freedom, justice, probity, and accountability. I'm repeating that place. And in solemn dedication and affirmation of our commitment to freedom, justice, probity, and accountability. These are pillars that our quest for reform must at all times not lose sight of and seek to expand when it comes to the frontiers of freedom, when it comes to the frontiers of justice, when it comes to the frontiers of probity and accountability. And for me, I'm not reading all, but let me add this from the preamble. It says, the principle that all powers of government spring from the sovereign will of the people, the principle of universal adult suffrage, and the rule of law, the protection and preservation of fundamental human rights and freedoms, unity, stability for our nation, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution. So even if you look at the preamble of the 1992 constitution, it gives us the aspirations that the Supreme Court made references to in Tufoy and AG, and our quest for better and fuller lives. And for me, when I heard the discussions surrounding the proposals for amendments of the 1992 Constitution, I was excited. I did not just see it as a political talk, especially when His Excellency President Mahama was in opposition. I knew that it was also a commitment on the part of President Mahama and the NDC government as far as the fundamental principles of our 1992 Constitution is concerned. Because, one, we have all complained, either on live TV or radio discussions or in our rooms, about the presidential term limits. And we have made calls for us to review it. Because this was what was handed to us by our colonial masters. We learned it from our colonial masters. They adopted it at a time that their development trajectory was progressing. Unfortunately, we adopted it at a time that we were still trying to find ourselves out of the woods. And if you look at even transitions alone, the number of months we lose at the back of transitions, I think that the calls are justified in a way. Because mind you, sometimes it takes a new president in excess of 6-7 months, or sometimes even close to a year, to form his government. Then you are left with about 3 years. If you are not fortunate, like in the case of the NDC and President Mahama, to have been handed over a comatose economy, then, and you would need about a year or so to establish your government and get policy indicators right, then 2 years of your administration would have been gone. And you have barely 2 years to implement manifesto promises that you intended to implement in 8 years. So clearly, your performance would be abysmal. So yes, we can entertain the thought of 5 years. And I was glad when I read the report and they indicated that even election dates needed to be moved backwards to somewhere in November, so that the transition period, we can have approximately 2 months of transition before the new president is sworn into office. Fantastic idea. A recommendation that I think that we all must support. Secondly, there's also the issue of what we call in politics midnight appointments, where when a new president is leaving office, they rush to make appointments. There are laws regulating that in the United States of America as we speak today. I remember on this very platform, in the past, I called for such considerations in terms of our legal architecture to make it practically impossible for an outgoing president to make certain appointments. So when I read the recommendations, and I realized that indeed the committee also considered the possibility of barring midnight appointments, I was excited. But the job will be done largely by the Ghanaian people, because we need to know which particular institutions that we need to take out and ensure that an outgoing president, especially 3 or 4 months to elections, is unable to make appointments to fill. Also, in terms of financial commitments, it must be clear the extent an outgoing president would be allowed to commit the nation financially, especially in the last 3-4 months of his tenure. These are things we need to take into account seriously. Now, there's also another exciting proposal, Solo, and that has to do with the age limits for the presidency. Yeah. Sometimes this politics of ageism is one I consider distasteful, where evaluations and assessments about our competencies are made in relation to age. And it is one constitutional provision I detest with every fiber of blood in me, hair in me. Because, mind you, even in the developed economies, we have 22, 23, 24, 25-year-olds leading Western democracies, being ministers of state, being chief executives. So it is difficult to understand why a country with a buoyant youth, an inquisitive youth, will restrict the age limits for the presidency at 40 and above. Little wonder that in most of Africa, they elect leaders who are out of steam and not in touch with modern trends to be in charge. And the reason why many of these countries are unable to develop is because of that lie of empowering leadership that is rooted in age. So for me, even the reduction from 40 to 30, that is the proposal, should even go down. Even if a 22-year-old feels that he has what it takes to lead a country, and the people feel that, look, this is the leader we need, fair enough. After all, you say the age of maturity is what, 18 years. What you can introduce is possibly maybe experience. Before you become a president, you should have served in this, maybe for approximately 5 years. We can entertain those things, either in the public sector. Those things we can have discussions around it. But the age limits are limits we must run away from. We must give people the opportunity to serve this country. And that is one interesting thing. You limit the presidency, yet you make open, in a way, ministers of state who are actually supposed to champion policies at the ministerial level. What kind of contradiction is that? So I was excited when I saw a proposal to the effect that there was a need for them to have a look at that. And you see, again, the number of ministers. There's a proposal by the committee that it should be reduced to at least 57 or 58, in line with the cabinet threshold in Parliament, in the Constitution, which places it at approximately 19. So they are saying that at least 19 times 3 gives you approximately 57. So that's their proposal. It is not bad. Something that we can work with. After all, we are working with it as we speak today. His Excellency President Mahama is running the government less than 60 ministers. And the nation has not come to a standstill. We are still moving on. Things that need to be done have been done. Challenges that need to be confronted have been confronted. We have been able to salvage a comatose economy, and we have placed it on the path of recovery with that number of ministers. So it is doable. But there's one aspect that I have always had my doubt. The calls for a separation in terms of appointments from Parliament, ministerial appointments from Parliament. I don't know it all. And so maybe that is where my shortfall in understanding stems from. Because you see, Senator, I do not believe that the problem facing this country is simply because there's a merger between members of Parliament and ministers of state. The problem is not just reflected in our institutions, it's reflected in our orientation as a people. Look, you can beautifully isolate Parliament and say that those who aspire to go to Parliament must know that they are not going to be appointed ministers of state. If you fail to pay them well, if you fail to police them effectively, they will still sit in that house and cut deals with the executive, provided that the executive is able to come there with money bags. They'll still secure what they want and move with it. And that's why I believe that is orientation of the people. Look, this country we have so many institutions. And those institutions were set up intended for us to work effectively. That's why I was asking you. Under Nkrumah, ministers were appointed from parliament. It didn't stop Nkrumah from constructing the Temamoto Way, Acquis Dam, and the likes, and many other factories that were constructed under him. It didn't. Because then there was integrity. There was focus that everybody associated with. And every Ghanaian acted as a measure or as a policing officer in terms of how we are approaching our developmental efforts, devoid of corruption. That is not to say that we did not have corruption-related cases under his tenure. But the most important thing is that the commitment was there. Where is that commitment today? We have used decades of leadership to erode those gains. So we need to go back to the orientation of the people. Look, you can have all the beautiful institutions. If the people are poisoned, and the orientation for going into politics is that simply I want to become rich, you can separate the executive, you can separate parliament from ministers. That cabal will still function. Now, even in a more regulated form. Because the tendency of parliament being isolated from the executive, becoming our problem, is high. It can be terrible if we don't get it right. Accountability in that house will break down completely. Because they would have been sorted out, they would have been bought, and they were comfortable. And the executive can have, people are underrating the influence of executive authority. That's the problem. People are underrating that influence of executive authority. Especially in a multi-party democracy. A sitting member of parliament on the ticket of the NDC, even if you are not allowed to be appointed into government, and the appointing authority, though you have no aspirations of being appointed into government, and you know the appointing authority or the executive can make you lose your seat, you think that they will bring a bill and you say no. They can sponsor a candidate against you. So these kind of thoughts, these are things that we have to focus on. So I do not think that simply separating ministerial appointments from parliament will resolve that problem. But we can give it a try. After all, we have tried it in this country before. And the executive at a point felt that they couldn't do with it, and amendments were carried out, and we reverted to the current system. But, well, like I indicated, it's a test we can entertain. But, Senna, in all of this, there's the issue of Article 71 office holders. I remember again in opposition, President Mahama spoke about it and made a commitment to the fact that, look, there was the need for us to look at it and review it in a way that would be commensurate in terms of other public or civil servants in our country. So, again, it looks like it was not just President Mahama and the NDC that harbored such thoughts. Even the Constitutional Review Committee has come to that conclusion. And I look forward to seeing these proposals implemented in due course, so that for the first time, we can begin to bring some measure of sanity to the political system, especially in this country. Because it is difficult to justify the huge payments to Article 71 office holders if you consider the suffering of our citizens, especially those who actually do the work, the civil servants. They leave their homes sometimes at 4 or 5 a.m., spend about an hour or two in traffic before they go to office, get to their office. They get home after 8, 9 p.m., and the next day they are out. The politician mostly is spared that hassle. Indeed, maybe he even has a siren he or she has a siren, a motorbike rider in front of him. So the traffic is able to find his way through. And quite apart from that, the tendency of him going home smiling is always higher than the ordinary civil servant. Because of the culture of corruption. You cannot run away from that fact. But yet still, the system, even upon exit, prepares for their after political life more than the real civil servant. That cannot be fair. And there's a need for us to look at that. And so it is also another important measure of contributing meaningfully to our democratic architecture. Because our preamble says equality of opportunity and justice and fairness. That cannot be just to the civil servant out there. Little wonder some of them have also learned the art of corruption, because they have realized that if you do not steal enough to take care of yourself while you are a civil servant, if you go into retirement, you may not even have a decent place to lay your head and your family. So, constitutional review, like I indicated in my opening remarks, a novelty that not only Ghana is thinking about, but many other African countries searching for progress and development. But the disappointing thing, however, is that this is not the first time we're having a constitutional review committee set up. This is about the third constitutional review committee. The question we should be asking is that, has that succeeded in actually leading to constitutional amendments? Absolutely not. So President Mahama has an onerous responsibility in ensuring that this also does not end up like the first two. This must be action-driven. We would want to wake up, and we are told that today we have the opportunity to now elect our MMDCs. Because I am a solid advocate of the election of MMDCs. And I say so because, you see, that is the only way the decentralization concept that we introduce as a political party, especially the NDC, would make sense to the ordinary Ghanaian out there. And so, hopefully, this government will commit to it. Sometimes it has to do with commitment. When Nana Akufo-Addo wanted to create new regions, he took the nation through a referendum and entrenched articles in the constitution. We had to amend before we could go through. So it is the commitment. So if he had the commitment to carry through many of the recommendations of the Constitutional Review Committee that were set up in the past, I'm sure he would have done that. So President Mahama has signaled the commitment, but it is not enough. It must go into action. And by next year, Ghanaians must know that indeed this is a recommendation, this is a committee that will not be treated like the others. Because it is frustrating, year on, having to meet like we have, talking about phantom ideas of how the constitution should be. Yet, no one has the balls, excuse my language, to actually put that into action. That is what I want to see, Senna, going forward. And I have absolute confidence in the ability of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and of course, the National Democratic Congress as a party to see it through. As for the politics of it, you listen to my brother Mujib. He himself is excited about such a...
PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.